Here we are. So there you go. That's me looking puzzled. So you want to start an album cover or book cover, right? What I would do is you can Google like book cover dimensions to get an idea about what kind of like dimensions that you want. This is how I would start, and I would kind of look and I'd say, okay, what kind of dimension do you want? What size of book cover do you want? Do you want front and back, right? I've not really put any stipulations on. I just thought you would do the front cover. But what's the dimension? Is it going to be portrait? Is it going to be landscape? A lot of music album, like, so if you're doing music covers, you could do music. If you're making it for a vinyl album, then you can actually see, probably get an idea from the ratio. So what I would say about if you're doing a music album cover, which is probably what I'll demo quickly today, is it'll be a square format. And even if you're doing it for Spotify or Apple Music or Google Play Music or whatever music thing you're doing, if it's a thumbnail, you're usually just doing it square format, right? So what I would do, if I was doing this in Photoshop, I'd have my images off to the side here, ready to go. You go File, New. And you can see up here, when you're going File, New, I would just go Custom. And then you can go different inches here, right? So I would go 4 inches by 4 inches. And I would keep, I haven't really spoken a lot about this, but resolution, I would keep it at 300 pixels per inch. When you really geek it out with me in the graphics courses, 300 pixels per inch is for print. So if you're setting this to be actually printed as a poster, you would do 300 pixels per inch. 72 pixels per inch is for the internet, for the screen. You don't need something as big as 300 pixels. But the reason that I would go for 300 pixels off the bat is because you can always decrease the size of the resolution. You can increase it, but it'll be blurry. Like, I don't want to get into all those nuts and bolts, but just like 300 pixels per inch gives you much more flexibility. You can make it smaller if you want to throw it on the internet. If you start it at 72 pixels per inch and go to print it, it doesn't print as nice. So I'll create that. Then I would just make like a blank layer here if I'm thinking of an album cover quickly here. And what I like to do is you can start thinking about some colors. So one of my favorite colors is blue. So I'm going to go here, throw a solid blue layer. I could also make another layer here, and then I would do the opposite of a solid, and I would throw in some sort of gradient to see what I like, just to give myself some different design options. So if I click, I can go here to the gradient, and then up here, you see in Photoshop or Pixlr, they'll have different gradient options. So if I go up here in the blues, I open this up, and then I can click and drag that gradient. And that's how I work with a gradient. So I pick a gradient here that I want, go over the gradient tool, and then I just click and I drag it, and it puts the gradient in different ways. That's the basis of using your gradient. If you really want to extend what you can do with the gradient, so I click there, you can actually go on here, on these little tabs here, and you can change the color of the gradient just by going here. So you can make your own custom gradients. You can go along the bar, and when you see the little hand, you can click, and you can add a little gradient area. Double click, and then add a color there if you want. Right? So this is all creating this custom gradient. If you double clicked here, if you clicked and added a point here and you don't want it, you just click and drag it off, and that's how you delete it. So you can actually make your own custom gradients if you don't see a gradient in there that you like. And then again, I'm going to make a blank layer here. Let's go OK. So there's my custom gradient up there for me. Make a blank layer, go to the gradient, click and drag that somewhere. And now what I tell students is start with a base coat of something you think's cool, that whether it be a solid, a simple gradient, or some wild looking gradient. Now you've got different design options right off the bat very quickly. There's my silly face. Now I'm going to want to remove my face from the background. I go over this in the Thursday, Friday when I start going over photo manipulation stuff, how to do that quickly. Up here, there's the magic wand tool that's popular. The quickest way to do it is use the quick selection tool, and then you can click around. You can just click and drag around the object, and then you see how it's got now. It's made this selection. Now, if I zoom in here, you see how the selection's not done perfect job around my hair. So I go back to the selection tool. If I hold the Alt key down, you see up here, I press and hold the Alt, it switches it from plus to minus, and it undoes it. So the minus will remove this, and then I can go back to the plus or hold the Alt key down. And there you go, that's good enough, right? So the quick selection, the plus, the minus, allows me to make some quick selections. If I copied and pasted this now, it would select the background. So I want to make sure that the selection is on me. So I'm going to go select and inverse. So you're inversing the selection. Now it's selected my head. If I copy and paste that, see I'm now in my own layer here. And then that makes it easy for me to drag that layer over into making me look like a rock star if I want, right? Okay, that's not dragging over nicely. So if that happens to you, then I'm going to hover over the layer here, hold the control key down on your PC or the command key down on your Mac and click. And now that's made that a selection. And I'm going to copy and paste it. So I'm going to go Command C. Oh, there actually it did drag it over. Look at that. I was wondering what was going on there. So it did drag it over. It dragged them under the layers here. So I'm just going to see those layers here. So for some reason when I was dragging it over, it put them down here and I didn't see that. So now you know if you have an image, it doesn't seem to be dragging over, you can still select it and copy and paste it and move it over. Now you know about that. I'm going to delete those. I don't need those. Go to my little thing here. And now I can start having fun making a goofy album cover of myself. So maybe I want my head cut off here. I can start thinking about design-wise where I would want that. If I want to make myself smaller, so remember Command T will bring up the scaling box. I don't know if I want myself like that. It doesn't feel like much like an album cover. So I'm going to hit Escape. I kind of thought it looked a little more interesting if I had myself down here disguising some of my face. So I might go Command T, make myself a little bit bigger. And that feels a bit more like if I'm making some sort of mysterious techno album cover. All right. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to Adjustments and I'm going to adjust some of the levels. So darken the head up a little bit. These should all be kind of like review. You can break down the color channels. So I'm going to try maybe adding a little more red to me. So right away, I'm like tinting myself just in levels, and I'm already blending the look of me into the look of the color of the background more. I know from being in levels that that's probably as good as it's going to get, but I can just explore the blue option if I want. That's pretty good. So I'm going to go OK. So the power, this is why I like the power of levels and hue saturation. These are my usually go-tos right away because they're simple and you can do a lot with them. So I'm going to go to hue saturation next and just jack that saturation up or increase that saturation a little bit. Maybe adjust the hue slightly. There you go. So it already feels more like an album cover now that I've tinted my head to match whatever color that I put in the background. Once you have your color palette or your color scheme down, it's going to be much easier to figure out how to tint your face. Now, if I wanted to do a more graphic-y kind of tint to this now, I've got that with the levels and the hue saturation. I can go up into adjustments, and I can try like a gradient map or something here, right? I'm going to actually make a copy of that before in case I screw it up and I want to do a quick thing. So gradient map is pretty cool for this type of graphical look. So right away, you see, look at that. It's making me look kind of weird. But don't forget, you have all your gradient options are built in here. So if I went to the blues, I could try it. Well, that's really weird. Let's try some pinks, because I feel like that might look, that's looking super weird. There you go. Now I'm just like a flat color here. Okay. You can reverse this, right? I'm going to go with that. And then remember, you have blending modes over here, so you can go scroll through the different blending modes. Actually, darker is actually looking pretty cool. A lot of it's just trial and error when you're looking at these blending modes. So darker actually look pretty decent. I could lower that down a bit. Let's see if I like that dark. Yeah, actually that's feeling much more graphical looking. So got that option. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to combine these two layers together. So I'm going to right click. And then I'm going to merge that down. So now they're collapsed together. And then other things, if I was tinting, I'm not completely satisfied with the tinting or the lighting on me. So you could go down here into this FX area or layer styles area. You can do a color overlay or a gradient overlay. So I'm going to go gradient overlay. Yours might default to normal. I usually throw it on overlay or soft light. So in this case, I'm going to go overlay because the overlay, it pumps it up a little bit more, looks a bit more contrasty and more graphical. So, or graphic-y or graphic, if that's a word, whatever, you get it. Here, I've made a custom gradient previously. So, I don't know, I could go into purples here. Let's see what this looks like. There you go. That's actually looking a bit better. The nice thing about this gradient overlay is you've got this angle right here, right? And you can spin the angle of the gradient around to explore different options. So I think that makes sense because it kind of looks like the lights, there's like a blue light coming over here. I'm just riffing right now, so this is far from perfect, but you get the point. Maybe that one was a bit better. I can make a copy of this to turn that off. And I could always play around with the opacity and like kind of combine those two things together. So that's looking kind of cool. I'm going to shift select these two layers here, right click, and then merge the layers together. I just find it easier to work like that, and there you go. So I feel like I've got a reasonable graphic solution for the way my face is now tinted with the background colors. I could keep going and going and going, but the next thing that I might start thinking about is throwing on text. What would I call this album? So remember from the graphic quotation way back a few weeks ago, your text stuff is here. This part is probably the easiest part of the tutorial or the information. Let's go to the horizontal type tool, move over here, Rockstar, I'll call myself. I have no idea where that type went. I love doing stuff live like this. Let me tell you. Where on earth did the type go? I'm going to try that again. Let's see. Oh, 300. So this is way too big. That's why. So I should lower. I'll go 48. The type was so big it wasn't showing me anything, right? So let's try this at 48. There you go. Rockstar. Yes. So that happens to you and you couldn't see your type. It may be because it's 300 or the size of the type is so large, it's not putting it in the size of your document that you're making. And then you can just go and highlight that, and then you can go and start picking different font that you want. I'm going to go Action Force because I've got nothing better on my mind right now than being an action star. So I'm going to capitalize this, make a few changes. Rockstar wall deck here. Yeah, all day, every day, party on. All right, highlight that and then make this a little bit smaller, maybe 36. Oh man, I'm gonna make that 42. There you go. And there you go. And if you want to remember from the graphic quotation down here in the layer styles or this FX area here, you have your drop shadow. You can throw strokes on things. You can even explore bevel and emboss. Sometimes it's kind of cool or cheesy, depending on use these things wisely. I don't like bevel and emboss too much. Sometimes it works. My go-to is, an outer glow might look good, but my go-to is usually a drop shadow or throwing a stroke on something. I think those are pretty classics. But let's see, where's the outer glow here? Outer glow. Let's throw an outer glow on here. So this might work because of the style, this kind of techno vibe that I got going on or whatever. The outer glow could work. To change the color here. Kind of like go with maybe even like add a pink on there. Instead of screen, you could try multiply. Overlay. Spread and size. There we go. So we turn this off and on. You can see that the outer glow has created a little bit of a glow. It's a bit too much for me. Move these down a bit. But I do feel like it helps a bit. There you go. So if I zoom in on that image, you can see the outer glow just pops those up a little bit. So that would be my quick demo